who specializes in the role of language in the development of children's learning, literacy, behavior, and social emotional development, among a whole lot of other things. So we're very happy to have her here speaking with us. If you could just make sure your cell phones are silenced. Bathrooms are right outside the hall, and there'll be time for questions at the end, so just hold your questions until then. Thank you.
If I'm saying something, thanks, Jenny. If I'm saying something that's not clear or you want me to expand upon it, it's like, because I have a lot to say. And as I warned Jenny, I'm long-winded. Let me know, because you're not a huge group. The most challenging experience I ever had was I presented at the 92nd Street Y, which seats 1,000 people. And I didn't know that. And I was sitting in the green room with pictures of Henry Kissinger and the likes, and I'm thinking, it's just me, Lydia from Brooklyn, what am I doing here with these people? But the blessing was that when you come out, you can only see the first 2 rows because of the light. So I calmed down in immediacy, but I can see all of you, so if you go like that, I'll repeat myself, or by all means, ask a question. The only caveat, and there's only one, is that I don't know your child. So I can't really answer a question about yours or any of your boys, all right? Because I don't know the case in particular. Right? So that's the only hesitation. If you have a question or something's not clear, holler, all right? How many of you are from New York City? Originally from New York? Okay, and all the rest of you, how many of you, most of you are from Connecticut folks, or how many of you are from south of the Mason-Dixon line? Ah, okay. Because I tend to talk very fast because I'm a native New Yorker, so if I start to do that, please let me know that I'm talking too fast and I'll slow down. All right. We're given to that. So we're going to be talking about executive functions. Executive functions are very much related to attentional issues. So if you have a youngster who has an attention deficit disorder, you have probably been told that he or she also has executive function disruptions. We all have executive functions, but when you have an attention deficit disorder, those executive functions are disrupted. So I'm going to tell you what I can tonight about the executive functions, how they work, why they're important, and then we'll get to some things that you can do at home, unless, of course, the child inherited the attention deficit disorder and executive function disruption from you, in which case, or probably more likely from his other parent.
Yes.
Because we'll talk about the kinds of things that can be helpful and why they can be helpful, along with some caveats. This image of who is this child is my mantra. And I spend most of my time training teachers now and making presentations. The handouts are out there. Making presentations like this to educate more and more people. And I always use this image. Because as I train teachers, what I want teachers to be able to do is stop and say, who is this child and how do I have to teach her? Like, who is this child? And how do I have to teach her that might be different than the way I teach her? So I'm asking teachers and parents to stop and say, who is this child? And the bottom line is that we all have an inherent neurology, as Lady Gaga likes to say, we're born this way. And you have to work with what you have. And you also have a specific temperament and personality style. I am a mother of twins who are quite fraternal, as in they don't have a single common characteristic. And they are, by personality and temperamental style, as different as two people could be. And thank you, they are the best of friends. But they're very, very different. Where does all of this come from? Cognition. What is your overall intellectual ability? And it depends on how you're able to use it. Because you can be very, very, very intellectually capable, but not capable of using your smarts, as opposed to someone with a more modest intellectual gift who uses every ounce of it. That makes a big difference. There are, as well, playing into answering who is this child and how must I deal with her. The issue of attention and executive functions. As I said before, if a child is diagnosed with an attention deficit disorder, he or she has an executive function disruption by definition. But you can also have an executive function disorder without having ADHD. Then there's this thing called working memory, and we're going to talk a little bit about working memory. Working memory, you have so many different kinds of memory, you have no idea how many different kinds of memory you have. But one of the most crucial ones is working memory. That's your ability to hold on to a piece of information for a brief period of time and use it. Now, what does that look like? Teacher asks a question. What is your name?
Jennifer?
I'm sorry?
Jennifer?
The teacher asks a question, and Jennifer raises her hand. And the teacher says, yes, Jennifer. I forgot. Why? Because while she was looking for the answer, she forgot the question. So think of it when you are being given directions. He gave me directions. Go down the long hallway, walk past through the double doors, go past the first circular stairway. When you get, I'm thinking, oh God, was I happy to see you. I don't know what he said. And then Jenny came along. You stop in the gas station, can you give me directions here? Go down 3 blocks and at the Target, make a left and then go 2 blocks. And when you see the house with the big red flower, done, don't remember it. Working memory, for those of you who are writing, you're using it right now. Because I talk faster than you can write. So you have to hold it in your head in order to write. And for those of you who have young children, think of this. You already know how to spell the words and shape the letters. They have to hold that in their head. So think of your working memory as, and we'll talk more about it in a couple of weeks, because it's really an important component of the way children learn. And then they have emotional functioning. What is that kids make up? I was talking with one of my twins over the weekend. One is very, very sensitive, and the other one's attitude is, yeah, well, so what? And the same thing would have made his brother cry when he was little. So how does that child function emotionally? Language, you have to keep in mind that the school day, all day long, is about language. The teachers are talking and teaching, and the children are listening and trying to understand. The entire school day, whether it's music or phys ed, it's all language based. So if your child has any form of disruption in his or her language system, it makes it very important that we appreciate that in terms of how we teach the youngster. How many of you speak more than one language? How many of you speak more than 2 languages? Well, you know the, not fluent in that third one, huh?
Well, we don't speak Latin.
Well, there's a very bad joke among linguists. It goes this way. What do you call a person who speaks 3 languages? Trilingual. What do you call a person who speaks 2 languages? Bilingual. What do you call a person who speaks 1 language? American. That's an old one among the linguists. So keep in mind that the language that you use with your children at home, and you'll see later when we get towards the end of the presentation how important that could be, and the language that teachers use is very, very crucial to the way children understand and how their executive functions are affected or disrupted. And then there's academics. How am I being taught? Do I know how to teach her to read the way she can learn? Do I know how to teach her math the way she needs to have math taught to her? And finally, the notion of sensory motor. How many of you have ever fixed a tag sticking out of a sister or a sister-in-law's neck? All right. Well, some kids can't stand that. And if they have those kinds of sensory disruptions, they are very, very distracted by them. Why do I use this image? Because in 2006, I met a little boy whose family had been told that he was intellectually limited, emotionally disturbed, severely learning disabled, and ADHD, and they made recommendations that were frankly appalling, and the mother said, that's not so. That's not right. And we tested him. Now, I'll be honest in saying he was a very difficult child. Behaviorally, he was a tough cookie. But they were wrong about him. And I was able to pull a favor and get him into a local special ed school. Where, are you ready? He didn't talk to anybody from September till March, because in his experience, he'd never met a teacher that he really, truly trusted. And then when he finally felt safe, he blossomed, and that little boy. Now, part of what he did emotionally was very interesting. He was naughty, and he chose to be seen as a bad boy instead of a dumb boy at school, and he gave his teachers what for. And so if you were to look on my website, you'd see his picture. And we drew this as we were looking at all the component parts of him, because there was a lot more than what was being said. And you'll see me standing with him with our arms around each other. He's in a cap and gown. I was invited to his high school graduation. And then I heard from the family a year later. He wanted me to know that he was disappointed, but, you ready? This boy who had been written off, first year of college, GPA, 3.84. There was a problem. I wanted a 4.0. So I asked teachers and parents to say, who is this child who's standing in front of me? What's going on? All right, so we have to keep that in mind at all times. Tonight, we're pulling this up, but this is one part of a greater whole. Thank you. Executive functions boils down to being the boss of your brain. Understanding how your brain works and how it controls what you do, and you being in charge of it. All right? I had no idea that there were going to be 2 men in the room. I did that just because. Let me tell you guys, it's a brave new world. All right? So it's being the boss of your brain. And when you look at the next slide, you'll understand the next component. The executive functions are basically the air traffic control system of your brain. All right? Incoming. Where do I have to be at what time? Incoming. Wait, what's that? What idea? Wait, was it my turn to do that? Incoming. What do we have to do next? Am I going to be doing that with you? What are my chores? This is all managed by the executive functions. And when they're disrupted, can you imagine the number of crashes that there are where things don't get done the way they're supposed to get done? So that's the way I'd like you to think of these executive functions. Being the boss of your brain is having good executive functions, and your executive functions serve as sort of a monitoring and traffic control system of all the things you have to do in any given day if you're a kid. Math, science, social studies, phys ed, get your books, get the right materials, finish the test on time, go to lunch, find where you put, think about it. There's a lot. May I have the next slide, please? So, and click again, there's 2 words. Executive functions are very, very, very important in showing what you know. So we have this sort of innate capacity to meet the different challenges that we are faced with and to accomplish particular goals using these executive functions. Because if they're disrupted, we are highly, highly inefficient. And that's not the way you want to be in school. These executive functions help us decide as learners, as taskmasters, what activities we're going to do and what we're going to pay attention to and what we're going to ignore. So that's where the word, how many of you have heard, he's distractible. All right? So that's a common representation. Which ones are we going to focus on and which ones are we going to ignore? They help us organize our behavior over time. So if you don't have good executive functions, you're often highly disorganized. All right? What we know is with these executive functions, they enable you to plan and organize your activities. How am I going to do this? Sustain your attention, stay tuned to what you're doing, and persist until the task is done. Now, I don't know about you, but the more tired or anxious I am, I will head into the kitchen to get something and say, oh, for heaven's sakes, I forgot to, and I'll head then into the bathroom because did I turn the water off? Oh, wait a minute, I never made the bed this morning. Well, it's one thing if you're 27 years old. I am. And I told them that the other night. I worked at Einstein for many, many years. Why did you laugh? Wait a minute. I worked at Einstein for many years with a woman who refused to be 30. All right, so she counted to 29 and then counted backwards. So she would go all the way back to 25 and then back up to 29. So this is not my 45th year, but my 50th year as a professional, and I decided to use that system. My birthday is later in the week, and I will be 27 years old, and if you don't believe that. So the important, the reality is that it happens when we're overwhelmed. When there are too many things to do and your mother-in-law's coming to dinner and the laundry's not done and the kids have to be driven and blah, 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 blah. But that's different than when it's the way you are all the time. And you have to be in school and you have to complete multiple tasks. So it's one thing if you get overwhelmed, it's another thing if that's the way you're wired. And you can't always, unless you're taught how, control it. All right? They help us, these executive functions, monitor our thoughts and manage our emotions so we don't lose control. They help us regulate our behavior. Now, as I said, I'm from Brooklyn, and where the language can be quite robust. And the computer and I were not getting along the other day. It's not an uncommon event in my house. And some of what was pouring forth was an indication of a complete lack of control. And several people came running to help me. But that's one incident, as opposed to things frustrate you, set you off. You can't control how you feel. So we'll talk a little bit more about that, the idea of regulating behavior. And as you're going to see, they help these executive functions. There are two sets of them, and we're going to go through them. Here is what you have to keep in mind. These executive functions are a set of thinking skills and another set that help us modify our behavior so we do the right thing at the right time. And I'll tell you what, having good executive functions, the literature is very clear, is actually more important than having a high IQ for school success. Because if you don't have, remember I said, depends on the cognition, depends on what you have access to and how readily they are. May I have the next slide? Thank you. So what are the executive functions? They are decision-making and planning processes, as you can see, that are invoked at the outset of a task. Writing an essay, taking a test, doing a math problem when you are faced with a novel challenge. It doesn't matter that you've done math problems before. This is a new one in front of you. All right? And they are what are called metacognitive strategies. Metacognitive means being able to think about your own thinking. And remember, they are mediated by language. Talking to yourself in your head. So at one time, the Soifer Center was in a tiny old barn, and my office was at the far end of the library, and my assistant was sitting, her office was in a portion of the library, and periodically she'd come in and she'd say, Dr. Soifer, excuse me, you're talking to yourself very loudly and we can hear you out here. All right. Now, on other occasions, I'd come walking out of my office and the chief psychologist was there, and I'd be saying, all right, first I'm going to take care of this. And she'd be walking out and saying, all right, I'm going to do this. And I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to me. And so if you have disruptions in your language system, it's hard to talk to yourself in your head. And I'm going to give you multiple examples of the kinds of things that kids are supposed to be able to say to themselves. So without adequate executive functions, sometimes you don't look as smart as you are. You can't easily do the tasks of everyday living. Sometimes your social skills are messed up because you're impulsive and you say things you should not say, because you can't always control. And you will not always look as smart as you are or less smart than other people who basically have the same gift that you have. That's how much power we give to the executive functions, how much we depend upon them to help us. Decision-making and planning processes. All right. Decision-making and planning function. I need you to hit again. That activate and integrate, one more time, and regulate the way we think and direct ourselves to ask. At a very fundamental level, they are involved in inhibition and with working memory. What it basically says, these executive functions help us define the problem at hand and then stop and analyze rather than act. Rather than act. So I might, let's see, if I am impulsive and don't have good executive functions and want to know where Daniela got these glasses, as you can see, I've got a thing about glasses, all right. I might walk up to her and say, wow, where'd you get these?
Memory.
All right. Where'd you get these? But as opposed to walking up and saying to yourself, oh, don't grab them, even though you want to see them, don't grab them, even though you want to see them. Where'd you get those? But I can say that to myself, don't grab them, when you don't grab them, when you want to see if they fit on your face, but don't grab them, when you don't grab them. All right. So that's what I mean about being able to regulate a wide variety of functions. How much control can I exercise? And that involves talking to yourself in your head and being able to do that as opposed to talking out loud. How many of you talk to yourself out loud? Everybody, come on, you know you do.
No more, I used to a lot.
Really?
Yeah, I worked a lot.
You've worked a long time, that's it. So we do that, we tell ourselves what to do and how to do it. May I have the next slide? These are the two sets of executive functions. The first set are the thinking skills that we need to select and to achieve certain goals. How many of you have kids in the middle school? Which means that they're now writing longer essays, aren't they? So now we're at 5-paragraph essays. And for those of you who would have children in the high school, how many of them are writing term papers? And those who are at the late end of high school are writing college essays. That requires a great deal of planning and organizing. And the more efficient you are at doing that, the better off you are. Then there's the issue of time management. We're going to talk about each of these. To me, this is a blessing because the clock is staring right at me. So it keeps me going as opposed to telling still another tale, which I can do. All right? We've already discussed the working memory and the idea of metacognition. So this is the cluster. I'm going to tell you what each of these is and how it impacts your child's functioning or yours. And then there's another set of skills for how we guide and adjust our behavior in any given circumstance. All right, may I have the next slide, please? All right. So, you know what, if you just poke them all through, it'll be easier. There you go. All right. So, let's take a look. The first way that the executive functions help us think are to select and achieve goals. All right. So let's talk about planning. Somebody want to share what her hobby is, or his hobby is? What is your hobby?
Genealogy.
Oh, really?
Right.
Okay? Anybody else? What's your hobby? Somebody else, what's your hobby? You have no
Tennis.
hobbies? You work too hard.
Painting.
Painting, all right.
Tennis.
Tennis. I did that before this knee was broken. All right. What else? One more. Oh my gosh, you work too hard, folks.
Gardening.
There you go. She's got two, you've got none. You know what my hobby is? I build Legos. I build enormous, enormous Legos. If you were to look at the website, you would see I have a 5-block city. I have the Taj Mahal. I have the Eiffel Tower. I have the London Bridge, the Sydney Opera House. Shall I continue? I have the Aston Martin, a Porsche, you name it, I got it. And I have a merry-go-round that goes around and around and up and down. And I have a Ferris wheel, just to name a few. All right. I have an entire airline system as well. Why am I telling you that? Because some of you need hobbies, for God's sake. Jeez, thanks, all right? Now, in order to build a 6,032-piece Taj Mahal, and that's a good example, all right, that was built over a Christmas vacation, it involves being able to create a roadmap to how I'm going to complete this task. I have to plan, what do I need to complete this task, all right? It involves making some decisions about what's important to focus on and what's not important to focus on. And then, to manage all of those pieces, I need an organizational system, like arrange things in order. So I brought up from downstairs the folding table that we use for Thanksgiving. And I have my chair and my work table. And all the pieces were in size order, in cups, in piles, with the image on the outside. I planned, I organized, and I built the Taj Mahal in 10 days. 6,000 pieces. All right. Now, what I don't have is good time management. So it's the capacity that you have as a person to estimate how much time you need to do something. All right. So the kids think, oh, it doesn't really take me long, I can do it. Well, there are mechanisms for teaching children how to do it and stay within time limits and to meet deadlines. Why did I not have good time management? Because I would be so engaged in what I was doing that I would suddenly stretch because my back hurt, look up, and it would be 3 o'clock in the morning. The entire family was out cold, and Mommy was sitting and playing with her Lego because I wasn't able to monitor the time. If that clock wasn't there, God only knows how long I talk. All right? So time management, you have 43 minutes to write an essay in history, and it's not good for you to spend the first 35 writing the most stunning introductory paragraph, because then you have 4 more paragraphs to write. It is not good time management to spend so much time on the multiple choice, because those are the ones you find so hard, that you don't get to do the fill in the blank or have enough time to write the essay. So that's what time management means as an executive function. Knowing how long things are going to take you and being aware of it. I often describe, I don't know how you feel about going to the dentist, but it's not my favorite activity. And I always think of how time slows down in the dentist's office when he's drilling. And if you don't have a good sense of time, then you need a clock in front of you, or you need an alarm to alert you. Those are tools that we can use. We've talked about working memory a little bit. It's the ability to hold information in mind so that you can use it while performing a more complex task. Writing the words while holding on to the words that you want to write. All right? And if you can't hold on if you have a rotten working memory or a weak or a vulnerable working memory, and for any of you who have had children who have had psychoeducational or neuropsychological evaluations, you see that there's a working memory index and a processing speed index, and when those are lower, it's often indicative of an attention deficit in a kid. And it's very important that the children's teacher or teachers understand what it means that processing speed is slow. All right, that working memory is weak. And for you as parents, repetition, repetition, repetition facilitates working memory. And we'll talk more about that when we get together. Part of what happens is when you can't hold things in a mental space, all right, because your working memory is weak, you forget the requirements, so you don't plan well. Well, planning is important. You forget what you're doing, so it disrupts your efforts while you're working. What was I doing? All right. How many times have you started to tell somebody a story, make a left turn, and then suddenly say, wait, what was I telling you about? All right. Well, if you're old enough to have grown children, you're getting to a place in lifespan that you're allowed to make that kind of error. But when you're a little kid, that's not supposed to happen. And it does, in the middle of a writing task, in the middle of answering a question, all right? And it's important to be able, as you see, to step back, think about what you're doing, and think about how you're thinking. It's called being meta, all right? View yourself in a situation and respond appropriately. The other night, I was telling Jenny before that I was having wonderful experiences of being honored, and then there was a surprise speaker. And I was so flummoxed by the surprise speaker that I'm actually petrified to see the video of this because I have no idea whatsoever what I said. None. No, there was no metacognition thinking about my own thinking. All I know is I made a joke about wearing blue suede shoes, and other than that, I don't remember a single thing. So being aware, thinking about your own thinking. What do I have to do? When we get to some of the examples, you'll see. All of these skills help you do the following, which you need to do to complete tasks and be successful. Create a picture of the goal. What do I have to do? I have got to clean my room. All right? What is the path to that goal? I know Mom gets crazy if I keep my socks and underwear on the floor, and she finds it when it's under the bed. Therefore, I have to go get a laundry bag or put those things in the hamper. And what do I need along the way? I'm going to need a broom, and I'm going to need the laundry bag, and I'm going to need something to dust the windowsill. I don't know how many of you make your kids clean up their rooms, but that's a perfect example of what it requires. I have to make a plan, all right? And even if it's a complex plan and maybe far away, having the steps in your head and being able to monitor yourself as you go forward makes a difference. May I have the next slide, please? The next set of executive functions, remember, this is the air traffic controller part. So the dates, the activities, the homework, all involve these skills and abilities, all right? So in order to reach whatever your goal is, writing an essay, cleaning your room, making dinner for the family, you have to guide and modify your behavior. And the first order of business is response inhibition. How impulsive are you? And sometimes what happens to the kids, it's just the simplest way of describing this, is thinking before you act. Thinking before you speak. All right? Resist the urge to say or do something that's going to get us in trouble. Evaluate the circumstance. All right? And think about, oh, what's going to happen if I do that? All right? What's going to happen if I do that? So the other, then, is self-regulation of affect. Manage our emotions in order to achieve a goal. Manage. I don't do well with the computer. I don't do well in Bloomingdale's. It's too noisy and overwhelming. How many of you remember the store B. Altman's? Remember B. Altman's? B. Altman's in Bergdorf Goodman. They were calm. They were quiet. They didn't have massive amounts of stock, and the people who worked there were often better dressed than I was. I can't go into Bloomingdale's or Macy's at Christmas time. I get twitchy and angry and anxious. So if you're in a situation where there's a lot of noise or a lot of light or a lot of movement, when I train teachers, I say what the children need to know as prompts should be on the wall there and the wall there. And please don't hang their work on clotheslines across the room. Think of what the bedroom looks like. Think of what the desk looks like. Because if they get overwhelmed, it's hard to regulate the way you feel. How many of you can say to yourselves, all right, calm down, just take a breath. If you can't, buy an Apple Watch. This bloody darn thing tells me to stop and breathe every few hours. Manage your emotions in order to achieve the goals that you set out to achieve. And then there's one, this one's very important. Is there anybody in this room who has never procrastinated? Right.
They're lying.
Right. They're lying, that's for darn sure. They're lying, all right? So getting started. Getting started. Now there are some people, I went to graduate school years ago with, lived with two roommates at Penn State, and one of the roommates and I would have charts with those big sticky pads on the wall, and we would write all the information, and we'd rearrange it, and we'd color-coded, and then we'd write a draft, and I'd read hers, and she'd read mine, and we would monitor them. And our third roommate was actually a lovely person who we despised because she would finish reading, and she would take a walk around the dining room, and this is the God's honest truth. That young woman would sit down like this. Put the bloody typewriter in her lap and a 12 to 15 page paper. You hate people like that. They're not nice people. They're smart, but they're rotten. And so the fact is, how do you get started and how do you monitor your time to keep on going? Do not procrastinate. She would procrastinate until the night before the paper was done. But then she could sit down and type a 15-page paper. While the other roommate and I were working for weeks, and we'd say, Auntie, how many of you have pulled an all-nighter? Never in my career. I can't, I need too much sleep. I can get up at 4 o'clock, but I can't be up all night and then function to take the test. So task initiation, don't procrastinate. Don't procrastinate. And one of my sons learned that lesson. I'm sure that Child Protective Services would have given me a hard time about this. But one of my sons came to me on a Sunday night. Mom. Trouble in River City. And I said, yes. And he said, I have a science project due tomorrow. Mm-hmm. Yeah, what you have to do. And he described how he needed a piece of poster board, this is a while ago, and he had to do this, that, and the other thing, and to which I said, it's 9 o'clock, the store is closed, you're out of luck. But I have to hand it in tomorrow, and I need you to help me, to which, this is why Child Protective Services might have been called. I said, guess what? I've already been to the 5th grade. It's not my project. You goofed. He never made that mistake. All right. So, knowing what you have to do, when you have to do it, and how much time it's going to take. And now you all think I'm a rotten mother. Oh. All right. Mental flexibility. Being flexible enough to revise your plan when something goes awry. All right. Or an obstacle gets in your way, or there's new information that becomes available to you, all right? It means being able to adapt. And I know that some of you have seen your child slam their fists in frustration because something new came up and he or she did not know what to do. And finally, there's goal-directed persistence, which in the vernacular, just to keep on going until the task is done, otherwise known as stick-to-itiveness. All right? To keep on keeping on, and not to get put off by other demands or other interests. Not so easy to do. All right? In this age of iPads, cell phones, Apple Watches, the distraction is sitting there waiting for you. And you'll note that I highlighted flexibility and response inhibition as well as working memory. Those three are particularly crucial, especially crucial. That if you have a weak working memory, if you cannot control what you say or what draws you, and if it has to be the way you need it to be in this moment now, you can't be flexible. Any task is going to be harder. So disrupted executive functions, any of them, make task completion and goal achievement harder. May I have the next one, please? There's another part to executive functions, and that has to do with what is called self-regulation. I'm going to make this part really easy. I monitor myself. I know who I can make smile or laugh. I know whose kid already has certain behaviors that I've described, but I'm also monitoring the clock. All right? So I monitor myself and say to myself, this is the, how many of you remember Mayor Koch of the city of New York? Right, who used to walk the streets of New York City and say, hey, I'm Mayor Koch, how am I doing? All right? That's what you have to keep saying to yourself. How am I doing? I know how many more slides I have. I know how many stories. Don't tell that story because you need to get to the other part. I am monitoring myself. And then I'm saying, okay, you're not doing badly on the time, so it's okay. You can add that story at the end. You can add that demonstration at the end. So if you don't have good self-monitoring, oh my God, all right, let me do that next part really quickly because I'm going to run out of time. That's for a test. That's for a project. That's for eating your lunch and getting back to class on time so that you're not hungry in a half hour because you were too busy goofing around, so the monitor would say. But I got really into the what's your name?
Kristen.
I got really into the conversation with Kristen and I wasn't watching the clock, so I couldn't finish eating, and now I'm hungry. Can I have a snack? No. Math is next. You can't eat in the classroom. Some schools you can. But, all right. So being able to monitor yourself, say, put Koch's voice in your head, how am I doing? And adjust if you have to. All right. You do all of this all the time, and you take it very much for granted, because you can. All right. How does it look in school? That's interesting. One, you got to get ready for learning. You got to come in, you got to sit down, you got to hang up your coat, you got to put your book bag or your backpack in the cubby. Word finding difficult. You have to put them in the cubby. You have to have your materials available to you, and you have to stay engaged in tasks. Get ready. I did a workshop for the Convent of the Sacred Heart School several years ago, and I was dumbstruck by something that's an all-girls school. Some of you must know that. And each girl had a laminated my morning to-do list. All right? She had double-stick Velcro on the back of the to-do list and on the upper left-hand corner of each desk. All right? And it was an all-girls school, so there were pink and purple markers only. And those kids had, I think it was 7 things they had to do when they got into class to be ready to learn. All right? And they checked them off. And I'm going to show you a checklist later. And the teachers had routinized these 20 some odd girls so that each and every one, and then when they were done, The teacher wouldn't, you ready? Wouldn't always go to Janet, but she might go to Stephanie and skip over Demetra today, but be sure to get her tomorrow. Nobody knew when they were going to be checked, so everybody followed through. And if they did everything that was expected to be ready, and the teacher saw the materials were on the desk and the pencils were ready, and the book bag was not underneath it, then she erased. She did a swipe with a tissue and was able to say before we were remote, "You're ready. By the way, tell yourself, I'm ready." So that was a classroom environment that created that kind of readiness for all of the kids. Do you know what happens after a few weeks? They do it automatically. It's so routinized that they simply and utterly do it automatically. All righty? So, a tidbit of neuroanatomy. Executive functions are largely, but not exclusively, frontal lobe. Okay. And here's what I want you to keep in mind. These executive functions begin to be acquired. The planning, the organization, the response inhibition, the task initiation, the time, all of those in infancy. At the end of your handout is a mini bibliography, including a marvelous article from Harvard that is eminently readable at a parental level, not for professors, that will give you evidence of how early on babies start demonstrating. Think about it. The baby is reaching, you say, no, don't. And the baby pulls a little hand back. From infancy through adolescence. Why, with all due respect, sir, why are automobile insurance rates higher for young men than for young women? Because the maturation is slower in young men. And this goes on to your early 20s, through adolescence into your late 20s. All right? So this is largely, but not exclusively, a frontal lobe, and it continues through adolescence. I need a volunteer for the next slide. Oh, two, no less. All right, no, you need only to stand. You need only to stand. Okay? You want to duke it out and decide, or you? Okay. What I want you to do is stand right there, and what I want you to do is read those words.
Okay.
Go.
Black, blue, red, yellow, green, orange, yellow, green, blue, orange, red, black, orange, black, green, red, blue, yellow, green, yellow, black, blue.
Thank you. Now, we see kids with ADHD and executive function disruptions who are thrown off their game so badly because black is in blue, and blue is in red, and red is in green. That is a test that is given to measure children's executive functions and response inhibition. They literally, black, blue, and it is measurable. You're fast, but there's scoring. New York. New York. Brooklyn.
No, I grew up here in Greenwich. Sorry.
Never mind. All right. But that's response inhibition. And this is measurable. This is the Stroop test, as you can see. I wanted you to have the experience. Are there some of you who were thinking if I had to do that, it wouldn't be so easy for me? You don't have to shake your head. Okay. But the fact is, this kind of task is hard for kids who have executive function disruptions and attention deficit disorders. All right. May I have the next one? So, executive functions in school. All right. Absolutely, positively, no doubt about it. Yes?
Just a quick question on that test. If
Sure.
you ask people to do the reverse, is it harder like I'm like looking at it and I was like, you asked
Would you
me
bring
to
back
say
the other slide for us,
color,
please?
but not the word.
Uh-huh.
That's harder. So is there
Yes.
something to be saying for
They're,
that it's
they're,
supposed to be one way or
yes,
the
they're
other?
both difficult to do. So if you look at black and have to say the color, that's another format within the test. It makes people.
That I don't think I could have done.
That's hard, right? And I was like kind of like, ooh,
All right, your turn.
That's
Go.
tricky.
That's coming off. Yes, okay.
Start from the bottom.
Okay.
Oh, you want to make it even harder?
Left to right or right to left?
Oh, do it right to left.
Right to left, okay. Orange, black, blue, yellow, green, red, red, blue, orange, black, yellow, green.
Slower, huh?
Yeah.
Oh,
That's hard.
it's not an
I was
easy
also going
test.
backwards, but that's okay.
It's not an
Just like
easy
sticking on my head.
upside down and backwards. It's not an easy task. So if you have to say the colors, not the words, if you have to read the words, not the colors, it's not an easy test. The formal version of the test is, in fact, requires you to say the color name, not read the word, but you can do either version. And for the comparison, even somebody who knows and saw the pattern is slower. So thank you for that observation. It's murder for some of the kids. So let me tell you how disruptions in executive functions, for those of you who are not already familiar with this notion, affect reading comprehension. If I can't do it here, oh, but I can. I want to make a point to you. We use the word reading when we mean saying the words on the page. But you're not reading until you understand what you have decoded. All right? So that's an important representation. It's okay for me to write on here? So if I give you a word, the meaning of which you don't know, and you decode it, you pronounce it, but you don't know what it means, you haven't read that word. You've only decoded it. Are any of you physicians? Are any of you speech and language pathologists? Occupational therapists? You're a speech and language pathologist?
Occupational.
Okay, then you're probably going to know this,
Yes.
so don't participate.
Okay.
How many of you can, do you know it?
I
How
just
many?
tested it for today.
Okay. Would somebody like to decode that? Not really. Okay. Have you ever seen this word before? So if I tell you, I'll make it easier for you to pronounce. Di, a, do, ko, ki, ni, sis. Diadochokinesis. Now, would somebody say that word as it appears on the board, please?
I don't know.
Right. But do you know what it means? Ergo, you did not read that word. You just decoded the word. It's very important to keep in mind. So what we say when the children are dealing with the need to read, direct their attentional resources towards the decoding and comprehension, towards really reading. And if in fact they are having so much trouble decoding, there's less juice for comprehension. All right? They have to self-monitor as well when they're reading, track the text. I've seen kids decoding skip a whole line and not know that they've done it because they're really not tracking the meaning. They have to use their prior knowledge. What do I know about this to help me understand what it's about? All right? And they also have to shift flexibly when they're decoding and when they are reading, from pulling up the meaning to interpreting what this means. Do you see how these executive functions impact in decoding, in reading? All right? The same thing for writing. Some kids just despise writing because it involves initiating after you've planned what you have to do, setting a goal, how many details do I need after my topic sentence, what's the first thing that I'm going to write, and what kind of topic sentence am I going to use? Am I going to use a declarative? Am I going to use a question? Am I going to use an appositive? What am I going to use? Making a decision, analyzing what the task is. And then think about the demand of the organization of writing, the motor demand alone, forming the letters so that they're legible, remembering how to spell the words, putting in the punctuation. My brother, who has a master's degree and has written the ELL, English Language Learner curriculum for the state of Texas, was very lucky that my mother was a very, very good typist, because he used to dictate his essays to her, because historically what he would do is he would write, the first page would have a capital, and 5 pages later there'd be a period. All right. So thinking about it, forming the letters, spelling the words, using the grammar appropriately. All right, you do not start sentences with conjunctions. I don't care what the New York Times does anymore. All right, and then you have to develop your argument. All right? Just think of the enormous executive function effort that goes into writing. In terms of studying, planning, when am I going to study? How much time do I need? When I prepared for my comprehensive examination as part of my doctoral study, you ready? 9 months. 9 months I studied. You know why? Because you have 4 questions to answer in 6 hours. 4 questions, and they give you 6 hours. You think you have to know a lot? Yes. It took me 9 months to prepare all the notes and, in essence, own them so that I could write them. So it entailed time management, setting goals, self-regulating, being flexible enough. All right? Homework, test-taking, note-taking. Think about the project that my son didn't announce until Sunday night at 9 o'clock. So you'll see some of the devices that I'm showing you at the end are helping children to plan how much time they need. All of these are executive function tasks for homework, test-taking, and think about, the test only has so many minutes. There's only so many minutes in a period. All right? And we have the next one, please. Now, this is a quote. This is a quote from a 14-year-old. Somebody's desk look like this? All right. Good executive functions don't look like that. All right. Good executive functions do not look like that. A good student plans and organizes for assignments, monitors his or her behavior, and says, okay, I'm doing all right, I can finish this. Wait, I'm going to have to work on it tomorrow. I think I have to ask Dad about how to do this part because I'm not sure I have all the pieces. And he's got a list of what he has to do and in what order. That's necessary. Metacognition, thinking about your own thinking. All right? May I have the next one, please? I think you have to click through. This part is super important for those of you whose children have some difficulties in the use of language as well. These metacognitive strategies, thinking about your own thinking, are mediated by language. Being able to talk to yourself in your head. And it's a bummer when you can't find the words you want or don't have the words you want, or you give yourself a wrong message. Language plays an essential and central role in all of this. So if your youngster has a language impairment or language is sort of on top of the executive functioning part of things, it makes it that much harder. And our job as parents is to give them the words to say to themselves. And I'll talk to you in a few minutes about how you do that. May I have an answer? So in the end, I was originally trained, my dear OT colleague, as what was called a speech and language pathologist. All right? And I remember giving a talk at Einstein, and my colleague, Dr. Jem, said to me, how do you always make it about language, Lydia? Because we are human beings. And in school and in interaction, it's almost invariably about language and communication. So take a look. May I have an answer? Self-talk is crucial for executive functions. It's about language. I wanted you to have this laundry list. All right. Why? Because ultimately I'm going to tell you you have to model some of the behaviors you want your kids to do. And you know what? You can do this while making dinner, making a salad. All right. So, all right, I got a problem here. We got 6 people coming for dinner, and Uncle Harry loves my salads. All right. So, all right, where am I going to do this? I need a lot of, do you see what I'm doing? Talking to yourself. These are phrases, and if they hear you doing it, all right, I really don't like making salads. But Uncle Harry loves to eat salad with a protein. Okay, I'm going to make some salad for Uncle Harry because he's so much fun. All right. I know I just don't like math. And by the way, I picked that for the following reason. I have multiple degrees from pretty darn good schools. All right. I have failed exactly 1 test in my entire academic career. Guess what that was? Yep, math. I do arithmetic. I don't do math. That's why God made accountants. That's why God made statisticians, so that Lydia can do arithmetic, not math. So I picked that one on purpose. I know I don't like whatever subject, so I really have to make myself focus. I can't stand eating tuna fish, but Grandma is so proud of her tuna salad. I'm going to eat some. That's the model. All right. So I gave you these, all right, as ways to plug in. Yes?
Do you have, I know you're modeling by saying out loud,
Yes.
uncle, but then at the same time, you're modeling talking out loud as opposed to not talking. You want them to do it in your head, so how do you bridge that?
You start with the external, and then you slowly move it internally. What you can do in your kitchen is different than what he can do in school. So, you know, your child could easily say to you, Mom, you know you're talking to yourself out loud? And you can say, yeah, I always tell myself what to do. At home, I can talk out loud. When I'm in the office, I tell myself in my head, or I write myself notes. You do that in school, honey? You can do that in school, you know. But you want him to see, or her to see, that you can talk to yourself in your head. All right? All the time. First I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do that. Lydia, go back into the kitchen, you left the kettle on. All right? That's how you do it, from the outside in. Is that clear? All right. So, and I finish now. You got to tell yourself, good job. You're entitled to the praise. I'm finished. I've been on a diet for 3 weeks. I wanted to wear a certain dress last Thursday night, and if it killed me, I was getting in that dress. And you know what I did on Friday after I woke up? I ate ice cream, all right? And a whole sandwich, not one piece cut in half. All right? You're entitled to a reward. I finished everything on my list, and now I get something for it. Because that part is good. You know what? One of the things I say to the children is, you know, that I never say good job. Good job doesn't mean a blessed thing. It doesn't mean a blessed thing. That was really, really good writing. You put so many describing words, so many adjectives, describing words. Do you hear what I just did? Sandwich. Describing words, adjectives, describing words. You must be proud of yourself, because I'm proud of you. because remember the emotional functioning part. So hold on to this. I would really rather not be ironing, but, okay? So these are some models for you to have. Now, is that the next one?
Is it as effective if
Yes, sir.
you pretend that you're not talking to yourself, but you're talking to your children, even though you know that your children aren't paying any, like, they're listening to you, but you're not really talking to your children? So you'd be like, oh my gosh, I have to make this for Uncle,
Right,
whatever. Is that as effective, or do you need to model it by?
both, both. So I know I sound nuts, honey, but when I tell myself what to do, it helps me stay focused. All right. I know you think I'm silly because I'm talking about Uncle Harry, but it helps me stay focused on the task. That's the message. That's the message. And then when I'm doing homework with Dimitri, yours I don't remember, but that was unusual, so I remember.
Adrian.
Is it really? You never told me that before, did you? A-D-R-I-E-N-N-E. If I say to Dimitri, yeah, I talk to myself, no, you might want to try it. And tell yourself, I'm going to do all the additionals first. It's going to be a hard one. And I'm going to do this subtraction. If you just tell yourself, you know, like the way I do when I'm making sound. That's what I mean about the model.
It's like I'll do, I have littler kids, so, but I'll be like, all right, so we need to go do this, we need to go, like, but it might be my task that I'm explaining to the kids. Is that's less effective than if I were just, like,
Oh,
now.
how many kids do you have?
I have twins, but,
That was good, Daddy. And what are the twins' names?
Oliver and Kayla.
Okay, so what you do is, Oliver, Kevin, I have to do a bunch of things. Ollie, remember, your job is to help me remember, da-da-da. Kevin, your job is to help me remember, and I'll keep saying it in my head. That really helps me when I tell myself over and over, just in case I forget, you remember. So they get the idea of talking to themselves in their heads and telling them, you know what? Whoa, that really helps me remember. Thanks, sweetheart. Because if I say to yourself, tell it to yourself in your head. Telling you to do it and showing you how and helping you see the benefit beats the devil out of me telling you what to do. Mostly because you're the parent and who's going to listen to you anyway. You don't know anything. But if you model the behavior. So, all right, parents, it's your turn. What to do, what to do. First, let me tell you this story. All right? This story is an important one. Those are my maternal grandparents in front of you. All right? And one of the cool things about my maternal grandparents, I grew up in a household with them. And my grandmother received us when we came home from school. My grandmother was graduated from, they were born in this country. They were graduated from high school. I'm the first person in my family to have graduated from college. All right? When we came home from school, we didn't get cookies and milk. We got bread and butter and milk. I ate a different kind of bread every day of the week. All right? My grandmother's response was, hi, honey. We each got kissed, my brother and I. And she would say, go to the bathroom and wash your hands. And off we would go to the bathroom and wash our hands. And then we would come back, and bread and butter of some kind and milk was there for us. She would chat with us about the day. By the way, the question, what did you do in school today? Nothing. I never asked that question. So who did the dumbest thing of all on the playground today? So what did Mrs. Becker do? Did she have a hard time with Andrew? Because I know he was being fresh the other day. Ask a specific question. Who had the best snack? What did nobody would ever graduate from college if it was true. What did you do in school today? Nothing. All right? So my grandmother used to say, go wash your hands, come sit and eat, and then she'd say, you ready? Go play for 15 minutes. I'll call you when 15 minutes is up, but not outside. Go play in your room with your brother if you wanted, and off we would go. When those 15 minutes were up, you know what she would say? Get your pencils and sharpen them. Go get a tissue and put it on the paper and sit down and do your homework. Why 2 pencils? Because if the point broke on one, there was another one waiting for you and you didn't have to get up. We'd already been to the bathroom and there was a tissue waiting for us. There was no reason whatsoever to get up from the table where we did our homework. That's called wisdom. She had no idea what the devil she was doing, but she'd already raised my mother and my aunt Adrienne, so she knew the name of the name of the game. She set us up. Get yourself ready. Get your materials. Get your wiggle jiggles out. Get yourself focused. Have your papers. Have your pencils. And as my mother likes to say, I know you think I was born yesterday, but it wasn't late last night. So you have 2 pencils with sharpened points, because that way you don't have to get up to go sharpen your pencil and stop in the refrigerator on the way. All right. So, what to do? Keep that in mind. Set them up. May I have the next one? All right. Model the behavior. I deliberately put that in because that's what our kitchen used to look like. Now it's very, very expensive to get furniture like that. Let me tell you. Model the behavior. Apropos, talk to yourself out loud. All right? Do yourself what you want them to do, and in the process, teach them how. So when I say organize time, I recommend a family calendar. We did it in our family all the time. Who's going to the dentist? When are we going to the doctor? So it was a family calendar. It is a way of modeling. I keep track of things for our family. All right. There's a kid calendar for play dates. It's probably electronic these days, but you also put play dates on there. Organize the time. All right. Periodically at dinner in our family, we all ate dinner together. That was a given. Now, I don't know if that's feasible these days in every family, but we talked about what the week was going to have, what the next few days was going to have, and we kept a calendar. In our family, the calendar hung on the refrigerator. Now you can probably do it on an iPad or on your phone. But the important thing is to schedule fun things too, so that everything you do, not just the stuff you have to do for school, is on the calendar. It's a way of keeping track. All right. Organizing tasks. When there are long-term projects, it's like you have to make a mental movie. We are going to Aruba the week after next. Do you know what it involves to make airline reservations, hotel reservations, rent the car, make the dinner reservations? Well, I made a list of what had to be done and envisioned the following. Me, laying on a chair in the sand with my feet in the water. But it took a lot of steps to get my sorry, pale, exhausted self to that chair. So organize the tasks, and what you do is you break them up and put them on the calendar. I did that. Make the reservations for the hotel, make the reservations for the flight, make the reservations for the car. All right? And sometimes what I do, and with the kids the same way the teacher did the what to do list, and you'll see later in your packet, there's a homework list. What do I have to do? And I used to do it with my kids. Which one are you doing first? Me, I always did the one I hated most first, to get it off the table. So organize the task. And then there's a notion of positivity. All right, I got 5 things to do. I did one, only 4 left. Do you hear the language of it? 4 down, 3 to go. So that the emotional part, because emotion and executive functions are influential. Organize the materials. My grandmother's name was Mrs. Semmel. Organize the materials. All you have to do is think of Mrs. Semmel organizing the tissues, the sharpened pencils. All right. Keep things nearby. Do you have math homework? Adrienne, you have math homework? Make sure you bring your calculator to the desk, to the table. All right. So that you don't have to get up and get it. What do you need to do the homework that you have? And I believe in the every few days backpack clean out. I have boys, and grotesque things live in backpacks if you don't take them out regularly. Sorry, sir. All right. And you know what? It really makes a difference. You do it with humor, not with judgment. I don't know what this is, Russell, but we're getting rid of it. As opposed to, What in the name of heaven is in your backpack? Because remember that emotional functioning circle. And I am the firmest believer in color coding. Color code, color code, color code. Prioritize the tasks according to what's the hardest, the most disliked. I always did math homework first, and you now know why, okay? Make a list of all the steps in a long-term project and break it into smaller pieces because those are easier. I remember Russ having, one of my boys, having to write definitions for all of his vocabulary words, and what I suggested to him was to alphabetize them. All right, do all the A's, then do all the B's, so that there's some organization. And prioritize the materials. Again, think of my grandmother, Mrs. Simmel. Get everything you need ready to do. Make it available to you. All right, may I have the next one? All right. So the next several slides, because I see the time. Thank you for being here. Yes, I know you said you had to leave at 8:30. I warned you. I warned you. I warned you. All right. The next several slides, and I'll stop because they are, if, yes? You want me to stop? We have to be out of here.
8:30.
Okay.
Well, people can stay.
Sure. So take a look at the next several signs. May I have the next one? This is an overview. These are general strategies. And where it says use visual organizational aids, those are checklists. Those are checklists, all right? Watches with alarms. Give yourself 15 minutes. You know why? Because if you think it's going to take you 15 minutes and it's actually taking you 20, you'll know that for the next time. All right? That's part of the reason you do that. We keep a visual schedule. What do I have to do? What am I going to do first? What am I going to do next? And when somebody gives you instructions, you should have this in your handout.
It's not on here.
It's not?
No. I misunderstood which slide to part out.
Ah, okay. Then by all means, take pictures.
We can put the PDF on.
If you want, I can stand here while you take.
That's even better.
All right. Oh, I didn't realize, or maybe Jen, you can send it. I put these in here, all right? Plan and structure transition times and shifts between activities. In our house, in my world, I have lists of my lists. And you know what? This blooming thing tells me it's time to stand up. But you can build that in. Do the math and the sign. Oh, I'm not wearing the apple.
Yeah.
Good night, everybody. It's been very nice. You should see me when I'm not tired. All right. But by marking transition times and giving yourself a break between activities, because sometimes I see boys and girls who rush to get it done. Why? Because the first one is the winner, and never mind how rotten the quality of the work is, but I finished first. All right? So we build in breaks. Here, take a picture of this as well. So I don't know what's missing.
What we'll do is I will redo the
Oh,
PDF
okay.
and we'll post it when we
Terrific.
post the recording.
Terrific.
people
So
will
then
be
don't
able to
make
get that.
yourselves.
And we'll put the link in the newsletter that goes out next Monday with
Okay.
the link for all this, so that, you know. So don't worry about it, you'll get it.
Yeah, okay, so don't make
Sorry,
yourself
it's my
crazy.
reminder.
But each of these right now for the things that I talked about before, here are concrete things that you can do. May I have the next one? All right. I can't tell you how important this is. All right. It's really, really, really important that you are not working in a mess. The woman who took over my office at Einstein after I left, I came back in as a consultant. When I walked into that office, I started to twitch. Piles and piles and piles and piles of things. And somehow or another, she seemed to know where things were. And I am not exaggerating when I tell you that the shelves that were on the wall were mounted with hooks. They collapsed off the wall from the weight of the junk that she had piled up. All right. That's not a good way to work. Think of my grandmother. The table was clear. I cannot work in a busy space. All right. And you can define spaces for kids. We used to do it when I've been consulting in multiple schools, Gateway, Eagle Hill, and we used to put blue tapes Because when I see a kid standing, sitting on a chair like this, I get nuts. And in the days before when it was safe, I could walk up and poke a bottom and say, what's this sticking up in the air? We used to put an X marks the spot and a blue strip. This is your seat. What's your favorite color? Oh, pink. Let's put pink blocks on the table. This is your workspace. Yes, ma'am.
We're building a new middle school,
Uh-huh.
and I was on the building committee, but my thought is there a list of thinking about different learners and that sort of toolkit of where do you put things, what should every room have? Because the way it works in our town or in the state is if the stuff isn't listed in the specifications, you don't get it. It doesn't get ordered. So everybody else, if you have stuff that you think
Yeah.
should be going into this bill, but if there's like a white paper or some sort of standard. or
Send me an
recommendation-
email and nothing is coming to mind immediately, but that doesn't mean that I won't be able to help
Because I
you.
know there's an issue about acoustics and sound and
Oh my gosh,
all that
yes.
kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, we all have these smart boards now with FM systems, and you can't imagine what a difference that makes for kids. But my email address is on the front of the PowerPoint.
Thank you.
Okay, sure, all right. And then periodically, if you're doing an art project, you're not doing your math work in the same place as the art project. It's two different things. May I have the next one, please? All right. This is a mantra. Paper, pencil, name and date. Paper, pencil, name and date. Read the directions. All right? You're going to get these, so don't make yourselves crazy. Create a mantra. What do you need? Pencil, eraser, name and date on the top of the page. I can't tell you how many times I hear teachers say that. And the kids, by November, usually get it. Then they go away for Christmas and it starts all over again in January. And you know what? Unless I'm wrong, you've already been to the 3rd grade, the 5th grade, the 8th grade. You know what? I don't know what the answer is. Go ask Mrs. Becker. Yes?
What's the checklist for getting through assignments? Do you have a checklist for that?
Oh my gosh, next one.
Oh, awesome, thank you.
All right? So we're going to get to it in a minute. This is important. Define what completed work is. You know what it means, but don't make any assumptions about what they know it means. Your room will be cleaned up when? All right? And make a list. And I'm telling you, don't make it more than 5 steps. All right? Your math homework will be done when? Okay. Your piano practice will be done when I have heard Fiorelise 3 times. All right? Be specific. Make no assumptions that they're going to know what you mean. All right? Your science project for tomorrow will be done when your name is on the bottom, the title, whatever the devil it is. Make it clear what the steps are, because that's how you get your checklist. Stop, think, plan, be specific, and assess. And in the years that I worked individually with children individually, I had created a mobile that hung over my desk that said, stop, think, plan, get to the point, be specific. And I knew that that had worked. I actually still have it. It's fragile now. When I went to the bar mitzvah of one of my students, he thanked the rabbi, he thanked the cantor, he thanked his parents, and then much to my amazement, he turned and he said, and I have to thank my teacher, Lydia, because she taught me to stop, think, plan, be specific. I wrote the Haftarah, but she taught me how, all right, the Devar Torah. That's the difference. It becomes, all right, a part. Go, Rose. Take a look. In your bibliography is the citation for Pat Dawson and Richard Gere. This is their 3rd edition. This material comes from their book. And one of the tricks is you start doing this stuff with your kiddos when they are little. You start trying to do this with a 9th grader, ha, ha, ha. bag that. You can come live with me. But look, just look, what's your homework tonight? Put a yellow line there. You've got no science? Put an X. Develop systems for them. All right? And then let them figure out how long do you think it's going to take so they develop a time sense. Obviously, I don't have a great sense of time. Shall we have the next one? Here's a homework planner. This is Dawson and Gare. Start at the beginning of the year. Mommy, I'm not doing it. Okay, I'll do it for you. And then that means you got to sit there and do it every day until the kid finally says, all right, I'll do it myself. You have to sit here with me. I'm 9. So this helps them develop something of a time sense as well. And we are coming to the end. All right? Now, this is the last slide, other than the resources. And this is where I get real. It is important to keep the following in mind. The student. I worked with a boy for several years whose mom was a special ed teacher. Lovely child, lovely family. I came out into the waiting room and they were sitting. Would you mind turning in that direction? Like this. Backs to each other. And I looked at her and she rolled her eyes. And I've never seen that. So I said, gee, why don't the two of you come into my office? He came, he sat down. She was standing behind him. I was sitting catty-corner. He's here, I'm here, Mommy is there. And I said, okay, Andrew, what do you want to work on today? What's your plan for the day? Because I didn't do homework. I needed them to say, this is what I am going to do, and I want you to teach me, blah, blah, blah. So he tells me what he has to do, and I make a recommendation. And she mouths behind him, I just told him the same exact thing. Okay. So I said, you know what, Andrew's mommy, we have work to do. We'll see you later. So I looked at him and I said, Andrew, what is going on? And remember I said she was a special ed teacher? He said, and I quote, I hate when she's my teacher. I feel like I don't even have a mother. And you see that guy? That picture was taken last Thursday. That's one of my twins, my son Russell. And one night, he and his brother were sitting next to each other doing their homework. And I came in and looked at what I thought was a wholly monumental mess. And I started to discuss what my expectations were and what they should be doing and how well they knew what was expected of them. When Russell looked up at me and said, Mom, we really hate it when you talk to us in that Dr. Seufer voice. So, be the parent. Don't try and be the teacher. Keep some humor in there. And if you can't do it, if it doesn't work, if it causes a disruption, the earlier you start, the better off you are. What I'm suggesting to you in closing is keep this in mind. The brain performs better in a positive emotional state. That's without question. Lose the judgmental, frustrated tone that you know creeps out of you, perfect parent that you are. Be a real helper. Be kind. Be patient. Be supportive. And then when you are done, go upstairs to your bedroom. Put your face in your pillow. And scream! And when you are finished screaming, tell yourself what an amazing parent you are. And when all of that is done, hire an executive function coach to work with your kid. Because what you don't want is to have somebody say, I hate when she talks to me like that. I feel like I don't have a parent. All right? I hope I've given you some things to do at home. I'll linger to answer any questions you might have. All right? Thank you very much. right, I'll stick around. Yes, ma'am.
How do you feel when they're so against it? Like, I don't need it, I don't need it, I don't need it, I don't need it.
Prove it to me, dude.